Life has a peculiar way of contrasting the extraordinary with the utterly mundane, doesn't it? One moment, you're navigating the complex labyrinth of corporate ambition, chasing the next big deal, the next glittering milestone. The next, you're simply trying to make sure there's enough milk for breakfast and that the rent gets paid on time, every time. These two worlds, rarely touching, often exist in perfect, almost cosmic opposition. In one of those worlds, we find David Miller, a name that, to many, wouldn't even register. He wasn't a titan of industry, nor a celebrity. He was simply David, a father. A single father, to be precise, raising his bright, inquisitive daughter Mia in a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. David's life was a testament to quiet strength, a symphony of small, daily victories. Every morning, before the sun had fully stretched its golden fingers across the sky, David was awake, not for power meetings or market analyses, but to prepare Mia's breakfast, pack her lunch with a little handwritten note, always a joke or a word of encouragement, and get her ready for school. His hands, though calloused from odd jobs and the physical demands of his current role as a facilities coordinator at a bustling corporate firm, were gentle. They were the hands that tied Mia's shoelaces, that wiped away her tears, that built her imaginative forts out of blankets and pillows. David carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, yet he moved with a lightness that came from an unwavering sense of purpose. He was resilient, yes, but not in the way a hardened warrior is resilient, more like a sturdy oak tree, bending with the wind but never breaking, its roots holding firm to the earth. His uniform, a simple polo shirt with the company logo, was always impeccably clean, despite the often grimy nature of his work. His smile, though reserved, was warm, genuine. He spoke softly, choosing his words with care, always aiming to reassure, to uplift. "We'll figure it out, just like we always do," was his silent mantra, whispered to himself in moments of doubt, spoken aloud to Mia when challenges arose. He valued integrity above all else, a quiet dignity that shone through his humble demeanor. For David, a promise was a sacred thing, and kindness was currency more valuable than gold. Then there was the other world, the world of sleek glass towers, high-powered meetings, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. This was the domain of Olivia Hayes. Her name, whispered in hushed tones in boardrooms and across coffee breaks, evoked a sense of sharp intelligence and unyielding ambition. Olivia was, in every sense of the word, a force. She was a senior evaluator, a woman who could dissect a multi-million-dollar proposal with the precision of a surgeon, her mind a finely tuned instrument of logic and efficiency. Olivia's office, high above the city, was a minimalist masterpiece of glass and steel, much like her own persona. Every item had a purpose. Every decision was data-driven. She dressed in tailored suits, her posture always perfect, her gaze direct and unflinching. Her speech was crisp, articulate, and devoid of unnecessary embellishment. "What's the bottom line?" was her oft-repeated question, a mantra that cut through fluff and sentimentality, demanding unvarnished facts. Emotion, to Olivia, was an inefficient variable, a distraction from the clear path to success. She was a problem solver, a strategist, always composed, always in control. Olivia was driven by an unshakable belief that success was earned through sheer will and intelligence. She had clawed her way up, never relying on handouts, always pushing harder, working smarter. This drive, while admirable, had also built towering walls around her, guarding against vulnerability, shielding her from what she perceived as the messy complexities of human emotion. Beneath her polished exterior, there was a deep, unacknowledged yearning for something more, something perhaps she couldn't quantify or analyze. But she was too busy, too focused to ever truly acknowledge it. Their paths, David's and Olivia's, crossed daily within the gleaming halls of Sterling Corp., yet they might as well have existed on different planets. David would be fixing a leaky faucet on the 3rd floor, while Olivia closed a deal on the 33rd. He was a cog in the machine, essential but easily overlooked. She was the architect of its future, an indispensable mind. He was the quiet hum of the building's maintenance. She was its soaring ambition. The only time their interactions became more than a fleeting nod was when Olivia, in her brisk efficiency, would deliver a new task to David's department, her tone professional, her expectations clear. David always met them, quietly, without complaint, always delivering what was asked, and often more. He respected her drive, even if he didn't share her worldview. She, in turn, acknowledged his competence in a detached, analytical way. She simply expected everyone to perform to her high standards, and David always did. But fate, as it often does, had a way of weaving unexpected threads into the fabric of even the most disparate lives, a thread that would connect David's world of quiet sacrifice with Olivia's realm of glittering ambition, and unravel both in ways neither could have ever foreseen. The city buzzed with anticipation. Olivia Hayes, the brilliant, formidable senior evaluator, was getting married. It was to be the wedding of the season, a lavish affair promising to be as meticulously planned and perfectly executed as one of Olivia's own corporate presentations. Her fiancé, Richard Sterling, a name synonymous with old money and new tech, CEO of a rising venture capital firm, was her equal in ambition and sophistication. Their union was heralded as a power match, a testament to their combined prowess. Everyone knew it. Everyone talked about it. Well, almost everyone. It began, as many life-altering events do, with something seemingly insignificant. A new initiative, a corporate social responsibility project. Sterling Corp was partnering with a local community foundation to support underprivileged youth in developing essential life skills and access to educational resources. Olivia, with her knack for efficiency, was tasked with overseeing the operational transparency of the project, ensuring every dollar made an impact. David's department was responsible for coordinating the physical setup for various workshops and outreach events. One crisp autumn morning, Olivia summoned David to her office. Her voice, amplified by the intercom, was as precise as ever. David arrived promptly, notepad in hand, a faint scent of lemon polish clinging to his uniform. "Miller," Olivia began, without preamble, gesturing to a seat opposite her desk. "We're initiating the Future Forward project. Your team will be responsible for all logistical support, venue preparation, equipment setup, transportation. I need daily reports on resource utilization. No waste, no delays. This is a high-profile initiative." David nodded, scribbling notes. "Understood, Miss Hayes. We'll ensure everything runs smoothly." "Good," she said, her eyes scanning documents on her monitor. "The primary contact for this initiative on the foundation side is Mr. Richard Sterling." David paused, his pen hovering. Richard Sterling. The name was familiar from the company buzz, but David hadn't made the direct connection to Olivia's fiancé until now. He simply nodded again, a flicker of surprise in his steady gaze. He was professional enough not to let it show. "He's very passionate about this," Olivia continued, a rare, almost imperceptible softening in her tone. "He's personally invested, ensuring its success. He's also my fiancé, as you may know." David's mind immediately went to Mia. The Community Foundation was exactly the type of organization that provided after-school care and supplemental education programs that had been a lifeline for him as a single parent. Mia herself participated in some of their smaller programs. The thought of Mr. Sterling, Olivia's sophisticated fiancé, being involved was intriguing. Over the next few weeks, David found himself interacting with Richard Sterling more frequently than he did with Olivia. Richard, suave and charismatic, was often on site, overseeing details with a polished, almost theatrical air. He praised David's efficiency, his professionalism. "Miller, you're a gem," he'd say, a charming smile on his face, though his eyes always seemed to be evaluating, calculating. David, ever observant, started noticing small inconsistencies. Richard would talk grandly about securing donations, but David would often see him take calls in hushed tones, away from others, mentioning large sums of money in ways that felt off. He also seemed oddly dismissive of the local grassroots volunteers, preferring to interact with the higher-ups or those who could boost his public image. Then came the incident that planted the first seed of doubt, a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in the facade. One afternoon, while setting up for a youth mentorship session, David overheard a fragment of a conversation. Richard was speaking on his phone, his back to David, near an open window. No, I told you, the books for the foundation are separate," Richard hissed, his voice tight with an edge David hadn't heard before. "This other account is for a different kind of investment. Keep it quiet, very quiet." David froze, a tool in his hand. He wasn't eavesdropping intentionally, but the words hung in the air, chilling him. A different kind of investment. Keep it quiet, very quiet.
It pricked at David's inherent sense of integrity. He dismissed it as a misunderstanding, perhaps. Business was complex. But the seed was planted. A few days later, a local community center, one of the foundation's primary partners, announced an unexpected closure of a key after-school program, citing unforeseen financial difficulties. This program was vital for many families, including some of Mia's friends. David remembered Richard mentioning plans to restructure the foundation's local outreach. Could this be connected? David, driven by a father's protective instinct and his deep-seated belief in doing what was right, decided to subtly investigate. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, just a nagging feeling he couldn't shake. He started paying closer attention to the foundation's public reports, cross-referencing them with the actual on-the-ground impact he witnessed. He noticed disparities, small at first, then larger: donated equipment that never arrived at the local centers, funds allocated for specific programs that seemed to have vanished. One evening, while working late in the facilities office, David received an anonymous email. It was a single cryptic sentence: "Check the Compassionate Hearts Benevolent Fund. Look past the shiny brochures." David felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The Compassionate Hearts Benevolent Fund was a high-profile initiative launched by Richard Sterling himself, touted as his personal pet project within the foundation, designed to provide emergency financial aid to struggling families. It was praised in the company newsletter, even championed by Olivia.
With a growing sense of dread, David began to dig deeper, using the company's publicly accessible database and his own connections within the community. He discovered something unsettling. The Compassionate Hearts Fund had indeed received substantial donations, but the outflow to actual beneficiaries was inexplicably low, and the primary administrator listed for the fund was not a foundation employee, but a shell company registered under a name David had never heard of, located at an obscure P.O. box. This was far beyond a simple, different kind of investment. This felt like a deliberate diversion. David understood the stakes. Exposing this could mean jeopardizing not only Richard's reputation, but also Olivia's, given their upcoming marriage and her oversight role. It could cost him his job, his ability to provide for Mia. He sat there, the fluorescent lights humming above him, the silence of the empty office pressing in. What was he to do? Keep quiet and watch an injustice unfold, potentially impacting countless families like his own? Or speak up and risk everything? His moral compass, unwavering as always, pointed to one direction. He had to uncover the full truth, not just for the sake of the foundation, but for Olivia. He genuinely believed she wouldn't knowingly be involved in such a scheme. She was driven, yes, but not malicious. The wedding was just 2 weeks away. Invitations embossed with elegant calligraphy had already been sent. The entire company was abuzz. Olivia was radiant, if a little more stressed than usual, finalizing last-minute details for what was set to be the most extravagant event of the year. David felt the immense weight of the secret pressing down on him. How could he tell her? How could he even begin to explain something so devastating? The image of Olivia, so sharp, so composed, having her world shattered, twisted in his gut. But the thought of innocent families being exploited, of Mia's future being undermined by a fraud, spurred him on. He had to act. David's investigation became a clandestine second job, performed in the quiet hours after Mia was asleep, or during his lunch breaks. He pored over public records, cross-referenced charity reports, and even carefully approached a few local community leaders, asking discreet questions about the Compassionate Hearts Fund and its actual impact. Each new piece of information solidified his growing dread. Richard Sterling wasn't just passionate about philanthropy, he was passionate about appearing passionate, while subtly siphoning funds intended for the most vulnerable. The shell company David had discovered was linked to a series of offshore accounts. The pattern was clear. Donations flow in, a small fraction was dispersed to legitimate causes for optics, and the vast majority was diverted through complex financial maneuvers, vanishing into Richard's personal coffers. This wasn't just embezzlement, it was a sophisticated, calculated fraud. David felt the immense weight of this knowledge. He tried to think of a way to alert Olivia, to give her a chance to investigate discreetly, to save herself from the inevitable fallout. But Olivia was notoriously guarded. Her ambition was a shield, and her pragmatism a weapon. How would she react to a facilities coordinator, a man she barely acknowledged beyond his job title, delivering such a bombshell about her fiancé, a man she was set to marry in days? He decided on a subtle approach first. During one of their rare direct interactions, as he was setting up the audiovisual equipment for a pre-wedding company celebration, a rather grand engagement party thrown by Sterling Corp for Olivia and Richard, David found a moment. Olivia, elegant in a designer dress, was briefly alone, checking a presentation slide. "Ms. Hayes," David began, his voice low, "about the Future Forward project, I've been reviewing some of the fund distribution data for the Compassionate Hearts Initiative. There seem to be some discrepancies." Olivia turned, her expression initially one of mild annoyance at the interruption. Discrepancies, Miller? Be precise. What kind of discrepancies? Her tone was brisk, already signaling impatience. The allocation of funds to local programs versus what's being reported, particularly for emergency aid, David explained, trying to sound professional, not accusatory. It appears a significant portion isn't reaching the intended beneficiaries, and the administrative entity for the fund, it seems unusual. Olivia's sharp eyes narrowed. Unusual how? Richard has structured that fund meticulously. He has a brilliant financial mind. Everything is above board. She paused, a hint of steel entering her voice. Are you implying something, Miller? Because I assure you, Mr. Sterling is a man of impeccable integrity. Perhaps you're misinterpreting complex financial data. David swallowed. He knew he was out of his depth in a direct confrontation with her, especially without irrefutable proof she would accept from him. No, Miss Hayes, I'm just raising a flag for review, for transparency. Olivia gave him a curt nod. I appreciate your diligence, Miller, but I've personally reviewed his financials for the fund. They're pristine. What you're seeing is likely standard operational overhead for a fund of that scale. She turned back to her presentation, effectively dismissing him. Just ensure the sound system is flawless for the toasts, please. David retreated, his heart heavy. She wouldn't listen, or couldn't. Her ambition, her belief in Richard, blinded her. He understood. It was easier to dismiss a low-level employee's concerns than to question the man you were about to marry, the man who represented everything you had worked for. Days melted into a blur. The wedding was now less than a week away. The office was buzzing with anticipation. Co-workers like Sarah, the always observant executive assistant from marketing, were excitedly discussing Olivia's dress, the venue, the guest list. Can you believe it? Sarah whispered to a colleague by the water cooler, loud enough for David, who was replacing a light bulb nearby, to hear. Olivia Hayes and Richard Sterling, they're like a power couple straight out of a magazine. Talk about hitting the jackpot. She's worked so hard, deserves every bit of it. David felt a pang. Hitting the jackpot. If only Sarah, if only anyone knew the truth. He watched Olivia from a distance, seeing the flicker of excitement in her usually composed eyes as she discussed floral arrangements, the seating plan. A part of him, the compassionate part, ached for her, knowing the impending devastation. He knew he needed undeniable proof, something that would bypass Olivia's defenses and force her to see. He worked tirelessly, connecting the dots. He found an old newspaper clipping about a similar benevolent fund scam years ago, run by a man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Richard, or rather a younger version of him under a different name. The details were strikingly similar. It was a long shot, but David had a hunch. He spent a Saturday afternoon at the public library, digging through old microfiches and online archives. He found it. A mugshot from a low-profile fraud case a decade ago. The face was younger, thinner, but unmistakably Richard Sterling, under the name Robert Stanhope. The case involved a charity fraud. The charges were dropped due to a technicality, but the pattern was undeniable. This was Richard's modus operandi. He had simply grown more sophisticated, more cunning. And there was more. The same mugshot image was linked to a recently dissolved marriage in a different state, to a woman named Eleanor Vance. This Eleanor was still legally married to Robert Stanhope. Richard Sterling was not only a serial con artist, he was a bigamist. The full truth hit David with the force of a physical blow. Bigamy, fraud. Olivia was about to marry a ghost, a deception, a man who was actively exploiting the very people David worked so hard to protect, a man who had already committed the ultimate betrayal of marriage. His heart pounded. This wasn't just about money. It was about a fundamental betrayal of trust, of human decency. He had gathered everything: financial records of the shell company, the offshore accounts, the old newspaper clipping, the marriage certificate for Robert Stanhope and Eleanor Vance, a photograph of Richard Sterling as Robert Stanhope, a meticulously compiled, undeniable dossier. The next day, David tried to get another reading with Olivia, but her assistant informed him she was swamped with wedding preparations. She's not taking any non-urgent calls, David, the assistant said apologetically, especially not from facilities. Is there a pressing maintenance issue? It's personal, David said, knowing how ridiculous it sounded, and urgent. The assistant's brow furrowed. I really don't think so. She's stressed enough as it is. Just leave it with me, and I'll pass it along. David knew that wouldn't work. The evidence needed to be presented, explained. It wasn't a message that could be relayed through an assistant. He had to deliver it himself, directly to Olivia. But when? How? The wedding was tomorrow. He carried the heavy folder of documents with him everywhere, a silent testament to the storm brewing.
He thought about his own struggles, the quiet pride he took in providing for Mia through honest work. He thought about the families who relied on those funds, the children who looked forward to those programs. And he thought about Olivia. Cold and ambitious she may be, but fundamentally not a cruel person. She deserved the truth, no matter how painful. As the evening before the wedding arrived, David found himself sitting in his small apartment, Mia sleeping soundly in her bed. He looked at the folder. This was it. There would be no more opportunities to subtly suggest. It had to be a direct, unvarnished truth. He had to tell her. On her wedding day, if that was the only way. He knew the cost could be immense. His job, his reputation, perhaps even more. But the thought of Olivia walking down the aisle, pledging her life to a lie, to a man who was a criminal, was unbearable. It went against everything David believed in. He imagined Mia's innocent face, and he knew he couldn't stand by and let such a deception succeed. He had to protect the truth, even if it meant shattering someone else's carefully constructed world. Tomorrow was the day. The day Olivia Hayes was supposed to marry her perfect, ambitious fiancé, and the day David Miller would have to deliver the most devastating news of her life. He just prayed he could get to her in time. The day dawned, a crisp, clear morning, almost mocking in its perfection. The city seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of Olivia Hayes' wedding. The grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel was transformed into a floral paradise, a vision of white and gold. Guests, a veritable who's who of corporate elite and socialites, began to arrive, their murmurs of excitement filling the opulent reception area. Among them, Sarah, resplendent in a stylish gown, snapped photos for social media, capturing the fairy tale atmosphere. "Olivia's day is perfect," she captioned one, unaware of the impending storm.
David Miller, dressed in his best, though slightly worn suit, felt like an alien amidst the glittering crowd. He clutched the heavy folder containing his damning evidence, his palms sweaty. He had called Olivia's mobile repeatedly, left urgent messages with her assistant, even tried to reach her through other colleagues, all in vain. Miss Hayes is with the stylists. Miss Hayes is reviewing the final arrangements. Miss Hayes is meditating. A fortress of bridal preparations. He knew his window of opportunity was shrinking, minute by agonizing minute. He saw Richard Sterling, impossibly charming in his tuxedo, greeting guests, a confident smile plastered on his face. David felt a surge of cold fury. This man, a snake in a suit, was about to destroy Olivia's life and countless others. David finally spotted Olivia's assistant, looking flustered, directing guests. He approached her, his voice urgent. "I need to see Miss Hayes, now. It's an emergency. It's about Richard." The assistant, overwhelmed, shook her head. "Mr. Miller, I told you, she's about to walk down the aisle. There's absolutely no way." David's gaze hardened. He saw the path to the bridal suite, a corridor usually off limits. He made a decision. He wasn't going to stand by and watch. He moved with purpose, his quiet demeanor now replaced by an unwavering resolution. He bypassed the flustered assistant, ignored the curious glances from passing guests. He pushed open the heavy mahogany door leading to the bridal suite wing. Inside, the atmosphere was a whirlwind of last-minute adjustments. Hairspray, delicate lace, anxious laughter. Olivia stood before a large mirror, breathtaking in her white gown, her veil resting delicately on her shoulders. Her mother was fussing with the train. A makeup artist was dabbing powder. She looked stunning, regal, but beneath the perfect composure, David could sense a tremor of vulnerability, a rare glimpse of the human beneath the executive. "Miss Hayes," David's voice, though not loud, cut through the buzzing room like a shard of ice. All eyes snapped to him. The stylists asped. Olivia's mother looked scandalized. Olivia herself turned, her eyes widening in disbelief, then narrowing in annoyance. "Miller, what in the world are you doing here?" Her voice was a low, dangerous hiss. "This is highly inappropriate. Get out immediately." David ignored the glares, the whispers. He walked straight to her, his folder held out like a shield. "Miss Hayes, I need you to look at this, right now. It's about Richard. It's critical." "Critical?" Olivia scoffed, her perfectly made-up face contorted in anger. "My wedding is in 5 minutes. Are you telling me the flowers aren't right, or the music? I swear, if this is about anything less than a meteor strike, you're fired." "It's worse than a meteor strike, Miss Hayes," David said, his voice surprisingly steady. "It's a lie. Your husband isn't coming." Olivia froze. Her face went pale, her eyes flashing from anger to bewilderment. "What are you talking about? Richard is downstairs. He's waiting for me." "No," David stated, pushing the folder into her hands. "He isn't, not truly, because he's already married to another woman, Eleanor Vance.
And he's not who you think he is. He's Robert Stanhope, a serial con artist who has been systematically defrauding the very foundation you oversee. The room fell into stunned silence. Olivia's mother looked like she might faint. The makeup artist's hand flew to her mouth. Olivia herself stared at David, then at the folder in her hands, her breath catching in her throat. She looked utterly lost, utterly broken. This is insane, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're lying. Richard would never.
Look, David urged, his voice filled with a desperate urgency, pointing to the documents. The marriage certificate, the old mugshot, the bank record showing the diverted funds from Compassionate Hearts linked to his shell companies. I know it's a lot and it's devastating, but you need to see it before it's too late. Slowly, her hands trembling, Olivia opened the folder. Her eyes, usually so sharp and analytical, darted across the pages. The mugshot of Robert Stanhope, a younger, less polished, but undeniably identical Richard. The marriage certificate to Eleanor Vance. The intricate web of fraudulent transactions that mirrored the concerns David had raised, concerns she had so confidently dismissed. Each document, each piece of evidence chipped away at her carefully constructed reality. The perfect life, the perfect partner, the culmination of her ambition. It was all a house of cards, built on a foundation of lies. Her jaw tightened, her eyes scanning the figures, the dates, the names. Her analytical mind, even in its state of shock, recognized the undeniable truth staring back at her. The discrepancy she dismissed, the unusual administrative entity, it was all there, laid bare. A single tear, defiant and unwelcome, traced a path through her perfect makeup. But it wasn't just sadness. It was betrayal. It was rage. It was the crushing weight of having been so utterly, completely deceived. He was doing this to the foundation, she murmured, her voice laced with horror. To the children? To Sterling Corp? David nodded, his gaze unwavering, full of a deep, silent empathy. And to you, Miss Hayes. He was going to marry you under false pretenses, while still legally married to another woman. Your husband isn't coming, because the man you know as Richard Sterling doesn't exist. He's a ghost. At that moment, a junior bridesmaid burst into the room, breathless. They're waiting. Mr. Sterling is asking for the bride. Everyone's ready. Olivia looked up from the documents, her face a mask of devastation and cold fury. The vision of her perfect wedding, the meticulously planned future, crumbled before her eyes. But then, a flicker of her old fire, her sharp intellect, returned. The professional in her, the woman who demanded the bottom line, snapped back into focus. She closed the folder, her hands still trembling, but her posture stiffening. She looked at David, not with anger, but with a gaze that held a complex mix of shock, gratitude, and a dawning respect. She had dismissed him, mocked him, almost fired him, yet he stood there, having risked everything to save her. Get security, Olivia commanded, her voice now dangerously calm, addressing her assistant. Have them detain Richard Sterling. Tell him his true identity has been revealed, and tell the guests the wedding is off, indefinitely. The assistant stared, then quickly scrambled to obey, understanding the gravity in Olivia's tone. Olivia then turned back to David, her eyes still raw, but shining with a newfound clarity. Thank you, Miller, she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet infused with a profound sincerity David had never heard from her before. You just saved my life. The news spread like wildfire. Sarah, along with hundreds of other guests, watched in stunned silence as uniformed security personnel escorted a bewildered, then furious Richard Sterling out of the ballroom. Whispers turned into shocked gasps. Phone screens lit up with urgent texts and social media posts. The fairy tale had become a scandal, live and in real time. Sarah updated her earlier post. Wedding canceled. Fiancé arrested. What? The collective perception shifted from envy to outrage, from admiration to stunned disbelief. The man everyone had admired, the epitome of success, was a fraud, and the quiet, unassuming facilities coordinator had been the one to expose him. David Miller, the single dad no one noticed, had just shattered Olivia Hayes' world, and in doing so, had saved her. The aftermath was a tempest. The wedding, once the talk of the town, became the scandal of the year. Richard Sterling, exposed as Robert Stanhope, was arrested on multiple counts of fraud and bigamy. The ensuing media frenzy was relentless, dissecting every detail of his deceptive life, and by association, casting a harsh light on Sterling Corp's initial oversight and Olivia Hayes' near-catastrophic entanglement. Olivia, still in her wedding gown, watched the news reports from her office later that evening, the discarded veil lying like a ghost on her desk. The initial shock had given way to a profound sense of loss, followed by a searing anger, and finally a chilling realization of how close she had come to utter ruin. Not just personal ruin, but professional. Her reputation, her company, everything she had built would have been irrevocably tainted had she gone through with the marriage.
But amidst the rubble of her shattered illusions, a different kind of clarity emerged. She thought of David Miller, the quiet man she had barely acknowledged, the man whose warning she had dismissed. He had risked everything, his job, his livelihood, his security, for the sake of truth, for the sake of what was right. He had done it without expectation of reward, driven only by his integrity and compassion. The next morning, Olivia summoned David to her office. The atmosphere was starkly different from their previous encounters. No brisk instructions, no impatient dismissal. Her face, devoid of makeup and still etched with the raw emotions of the previous day, looked softer, more human than David had ever seen it. "David," she began, eschewing the formal Miller for the first time, I don't even know where to begin to thank you." Her voice was still a little shaky. "You saved me from a disaster that would have destroyed my life, my career, everything. And you did it when I was too blind, too proud to listen." David, though relieved, still felt a pang of awkwardness. "I just did what I thought was right, Miss Hayes. Those families, those children, they deserved better. And you deserve the truth." Olivia nodded slowly, looking out at the city skyline, a view that usually filled her with a sense of triumph, but now seemed to mock her past priorities. "I've always valued logic, efficiency, results. I dismissed emotion, intuition. I prioritized success above almost everything. Richard was the embodiment of that success, or so I thought." She sighed, a deep, weary sound. "You opened my eyes, David, not just about Richard, but about myself, about what truly matters." What followed was a profound shift. Sterling Corp launched a full internal investigation into the Future Forward project and the Compassionate Hearts Benevolent Fund. Olivia herself led the charge, ruthless in her pursuit of justice, ensuring every stolen penny was recovered and every defrauded family compensated. She personally apologized to the community leaders she had initially dismissed. More remarkably, Olivia began to change. Her bottom line shifted. She started investing in community outreach not just for optics, but for genuine impact. She sought out David's advice on ground-level needs, valuing his insights, his connection to the real people the program served. Their professional relationship transformed into one of mutual respect, built on a foundation of trust and a shared commitment to ethical action.
David, far from being fired, was promoted. Olivia created a new role for him, community liaison and ethical oversight coordinator, leveraging his integrity and community knowledge. He would now work directly with her, ensuring genuine impact and preventing future abuses. It was a role that perfectly aligned with his values, providing him stability and a platform to make a real difference, not just for Mia, but for many other children. Sarah and the rest of the company watched this transformation with a mixture of awe and admiration. "Can you believe Olivia?" Sarah murmured to a colleague one afternoon. "She's completely different. And David Miller, who knew he was such a hero?" The public perception of both David and Olivia had irrevocably shifted. David, the quiet single dad, became a symbol of unwavering integrity. Olivia, the ambitious executive, became a testament to the power of growth and redemption. One afternoon, months later, Olivia found David in the lobby, waiting for Mia after school. Mia, now enrolled in one of the revitalized after-school programs, ran to her father, beaming. "Hi, Dad! Guess what? We built a robot today!" Mia exclaimed, clutching a drawing. David smiled, his eyes warm. "That's amazing, Sweet Pea. We'll figure out how to make it fly, just like we always do." Olivia watched them, a soft smile gracing her lips. "She's a wonderful child, David," she agreed. "She is," David agreed, ruffling Mia's hair. "She's my whole world." Olivia paused, then spoke, her voice reflective. "You know, I used to think success was about accumulating, about reaching the top, having everything perfect. But you showed me it's about what you don't lose, what you protect, what you stand for." She looked at him, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "Thank you, David, for teaching me that lesson. It was the most important bottom line I ever learned." David simply nodded, a gentle smile on his face. The city hummed around them, a symphony of contrasting lives now harmonized by an unexpected truth. The quiet single dad had shattered his boss's perfect world, and in its place had helped her build something infinitely more genuine, more meaningful. And perhaps, just perhaps, a connection had formed between them, deeper than professional respect, a bond forged in the crucible of betrayal and redeemed by unwavering kindness. The journey had been painful, but the lesson, like David's quiet strength, would endure.